We used to be that annoying couple that finished each other's sentences and wore matching Halloween costumes. You know, the kind of couple you either roll your eyes at or try to copy. At least that's what I thought. Call me Carl. I've been married to Trish for 7 years. No kids. Trish worked at a tech consulting firm. Nothing too glamorous, but she loved the job. Her boss, Mr. Charming CEO in a hoodie, Travis, was the kind of guy who thought using synergy in a sentence made him smart. I met him once at the company holiday party. He gave me one of those limp handshakes and a fake smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. My radar pinged, but I brushed it off. The first real red flag? A weekend camping trip Travis organized for the core team. Trish begged me to come along so I wouldn't feel left out. In hindsight, that should have been my first clue that I was being paraded around like a decoy. I went. Bad idea. Trish got weird after that trip. Detached. Snappish. Started leaving the room to answer calls. Took up early morning jogs even though the woman thought cardio was a government scam last month. She started working late more often, which wasn't totally out of character, except she never smelled like the office. She smelled like cologne. Not mine. And she started wearing lipstick again, red. Travis always said he liked bold women. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was stress. Maybe I was paranoid. But then, the text happened. One night, Trish left her phone on the coffee table. It buzzed with a message from T-Dog. I kid you not. That's what she saved Travis under. Who does that? Unless you're 12 or being shady. I didn't even need to read the message. The preview alone was enough. Something about that tent night keeps coming back to me. Tent. The camping trip. It hit me like ice water to the heart. She walked in while I was staring at the phone and froze like a cat caught mid-heist. What are you doing with my phone? She demanded. I looked up at her, deadpan. Reading a text from your boss. Or should I say T-Dog? And then it began. It's not what you think. He's just friendly. That's how he texts everyone. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd freak out. Yeah, Trish? I am freaking out. Because the woman I trusted is doing yoga poses in the woods with her married boss while I'm at home meal prepping for us like a moron. She swore nothing physical happened. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling wondering how I ended up in a marriage where my wife and her boss had secret nicknames and shared tents on a work trip. After the entire T-Dog text incident, things reached an unusual standstill. Trish insisted that it was not physical. She stated that she loved me. I played dumb. Smiled. Said I believed her. She'd hum while getting ready in the mornings, which she never used to do. Lipstick started making a regular comeback. Deep reds and burgundies I hadn't seen in years. I mentioned it once, half joking. You going for a job interview or a date? I asked, smiling just enough to pass it off. She laughed. You're ridiculous. And maybe I was. Maybe I wanted to be. Because deep down, some part of me still wanted to believe her story. That it was all innocent. That T-Dog was just a cringy nickname between colleagues and nothing more. But that belief cracked the night she came home late. She'd said there was a meeting last minute. Client dinner, she called it. She left in a rush, spraying perfume in the hallway like breadcrumbs she expected me to follow. She was gone for over 5 hours. When she finally walked through the door, she looked different. Hair slightly tousled, lipstick touched up but clumsily, and that look in her eyes, like she wasn't sure which version of her life she was walking into. Sorry, the dinner ran long, she said, placing her bag on the table without making eye contact. Everything okay? I asked, glancing at the time. She nodded too quickly. Yeah, of course. Just business. She disappeared into the bathroom. I sat on the couch, TV glowing in front of me, watching her reflection walk across the polished floor without hearing a word she said. She didn't smell like food. She didn't bring leftovers. She didn't ask how my night was. And worst of all, she didn't say, I love you, before going to bed. And I didn't ask why. I didn't want the answer. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was the only person in the house actually present. Trish was next to me, but miles away. The next morning, I made a decision, not out of strategy, but desperation. I told her I had a short work trip. 2 nights, maybe 3. Something about a vendor meeting 2 towns over. She didn't even blink. All right, be safe, she said, pecking me on the cheek. She didn't ask which town, which hotel, whether I'd miss her. So I packed a bag, got in the car, and drove to the one place I knew I could disappear in plain sight. Monroe's, a local bar club downtown, the kind that's always too loud and too dim to think too hard. I wasn't looking for anything. Just noise. Just a distraction. I sat at the bar and ordered a drink. Neat. A few minutes later, the guy next to me ordered the same. He gave me a nod. Solid choice. I smiled. Helps numb the part of your brain that thinks too much. He chuckled. Or at least slows it down. We sat in silence for a few sips, then started talking. Just small stuff. Weather. The crowd. Sports. Eventually, we got around to what we did for a living. I told him I did systems work for a regional software distributor. Nothing flashy. He said he worked in tech too. Built a company years ago. Ran it. Eventually handed off operations to the board. You might know it, he said, sipping his bourbon. Onyx Digital. I nearly choked. Wait. Seriously? That's where my wife works. And her boss. Travis. You know him. He made a face like he bit into something sour. Unfortunately. Arrogant. Lazy with money. Laziest with people. I never should have let him in that position. I stared at my glass for a beat. That's interesting. He turned toward me slightly. Why? Because, I said, I think my wife is seeing him behind my back. He didn't say anything for a moment. Just nodded slowly. You've got the look. What look? The look of a man who knows, but doesn't have the proof he wants. We sat for a while longer, quieter now. The weight of shared understanding hung between us. Then he leaned in slightly, voice low but calm. Look, I'm not big on drama. But I also don't like people who think they can use others without consequence. I looked at him. What are you saying? He smiled. I'm saying, maybe we fix this slowly. The right way? Make sure the fall hurts just enough. We clinked glasses. Let's talk again soon, he said, tossing a business card on the bar. We've got some planning to do. After that night at Monroe's, I checked into a modest hotel just outside of town and sat on the edge of the bed like I was waiting for instructions from a life coach who forgot I existed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there with Elliot's card in my hand, thinking about how surreal everything had become. The man I randomly sat next to at a bar. Turns out he built the company where my wife was playing her second life. That's either fate with a twisted sense of humor or karma clocking in for a double shift. The next morning, I decided to text to Elliot. Elliot replied me. Lasagna and conversation? My wife insists. 6:30 UN. I hesitated. But curiosity, and honestly, the need for a steady ally, won out. His house was nothing flashy. Nice, but not CEO billionaire nice. Comfortable. Human. His wife, Mary Ann, greeted me with the warmth I hadn't felt in my own home for months. You must be Carl, she smiled, apron still dusted with flour. Come in. He's been talking about you all day. That surprised me. Not many people talk about a betrayed husband like a guy they're excited to host. We sat at their kitchen table, me, Elliot, and Mary Ann, eating lasagna that might have healed something in my soul. All right, Elliot said between bites. You said your wife works in client services? Yeah. She's the client experience manager now. Whatever that means. He nodded. And she reports to Travis? Directly. Mary Ann raised an eyebrow. That guy's still around? Unfortunately, Elliot said. He's been a liability. Charismatic, but messy. Thought he could hide it. Thought I wouldn't notice. I cleared my throat. I'm guessing he thinks the same about my wife. Elliot leaned back, thinking. They're not very original. You'd be amazed how many people in power think they're subtle. He reached over to a side drawer and pulled out a tablet, swiped a few times, and handed it to me. Take a look. On the screen, an expense report. Hotel name. 2 dinners. 1 room. No client names attached. Date matched the night Trish claimed she had a meeting. I didn't even flinch. Just handed it back. Guess I'm not crazy after all. Nope, Elliot said. You're just married to someone who thinks you are. We talked for hours. Mary Ann eventually left us to our scheming and coffee. That's when the real conversation started. I don't want to ruin her life, I said. I just want out. But I want to walk out with my head high and my wallet intact. Good, Elliot nodded. Because I don't believe in rage. I believe in strategy. We started brainstorming. Not revenge exactly, but accountability. Elliot would quietly pull financial data, documentation, timelines. He'd have HR keep things quiet, for now. I'd collect my own evidence. Trish didn't know I was onto her, and that gave me time. Time to get organized. You have to stay calm, Elliot said. Whatever you do, don't tip your hand. Be boring. Be dependable. Make her think she's still got you wrapped around her finger. That won't be hard, I muttered. She's not even looking at my hands anymore. He smirked. All the better. By the time I left his house that night, I had 3 things I didn't have the day before. Proof. A plan. A powerful ally who'd already started clearing the chessboard. And back home? Trish had no idea that the quiet husband sleeping beside her was already halfway out the door, with both eyes open. Returning home was like stepping onto a stage mid-performance. I pulled into the driveway around 9:15 p.m. Lights were on, porch light glowing like nothing had ever cracked beneath the surface. Trish opened the door before I could even get my key in. "Hey," she smiled. "You're back early." Wrapped up quicker than I thought. I held up a takeout bag. "Brought some pad thai. Figured you hadn't eaten." "Oh," she paused, clearly unsure how to respond. "That's sweet of you." I'd never seen someone try so hard to smile while scanning a bag for evidence. She trailed behind me into the kitchen. I set the bag down, pulled out the containers, and grabbed 2 forks. "How was your week?" I asked. "Busy." She leaned against the counter. "Meetings, new account kickoff. Travis had me working on a proposal with some of the team." I nodded. "Hope it wasn't too stressful." She blinked. "No. I mean, it's just work." The whole exchange had the emotional depth of a weather report. That night in bed, she reached for her phone 1 too many times before pretending to sleep. I lay next to her, motionless, like someone trying not to disturb a wasp's nest they couldn't move away from. The next few days, I played the part, Carl the supportive husband. Drove her car to get the oil changed. Did the dishes. Laughed when she showed me memes like nothing was cracked behind the smile. Meanwhile, I got my hands on a backup phone and used it to store copies of every relevant email, message, calendar notification, and receipt. Elliot's HR contact quietly supplied me with internal call logs and flagged expense reports, 3 dinners, 2 hotels, 1 client feedback session that happened in a spa. Trish didn't notice anything. She was too busy, working late, and humming in the mornings. Then, just as Elliot had predicted, a perfect opportunity dropped into our laps. Trish came home one night, practically buzzing. "So, there's this company retreat next weekend," she said, casually, dropping her purse by the stairs. "Travis is hosting it at his lake house. Kind of a team-building thing." I didn't react. Just kept reading the paper like I was a 1950s sitcom dad. "That's cool," I said. "Is it just for staff?" "No, spouses are invited too." She added quickly, "It's more of a casual, social thing." I turned a page. "Sounds fun. I'll go." There was a beat of silence. "You will?" "Of course. Be good to meet everyone. You've always said I should network more." She smiled, but her eyes were studying me like I'd answered a riddle incorrectly. And just like that, the game changed. I texted Elliot that night. "I'm going to the lake house. Travis is inviting spouses. Time to see the circus up close." He replied instantly. "I'll be nearby. Let's coordinate. This is your moment." Over the next few days, we drafted a playbook. Let Trish believe I was tagging along like a dopey golden retriever. Smile. Shake hands. Compliment the cheese tray. Meanwhile, Elliot and I would be watching everything from 2 angles. She wouldn't know it yet, but by the end of that retreat, the mask would start to slip, and all I had to do was act normal. The lake house looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Wide wraparound deck, fire pit overlooking the water, and glass doors polished within an inch of their lives. The kind of place that says, relaxation, if you don't know who owns it, and get your story straight, if you do. We pulled up just after sunset. Trish adjusted her makeup in the mirror for the 3rd time while I sat silently in the passenger seat, mentally reviewing the plan. She looked over at me. "Try to have fun, okay? I'm here, aren't I?" She gave me that half-laugh people give when they're not sure if you're being sweet or sarcastic. We walked in holding hands. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. Travis greeted us at the door. Smug as ever, dressed like someone who Googled wealthy casual and hit every cliché. "Carl, glad you could make it, man," he said, clapping me on the shoulder like we were old college buddies. I smiled politely. "Thanks, Travis. Been hearing a lot about this place." He grinned. "It's nothing. Just a little getaway spot. You know how it is." Oh, I was about to. Inside, the crowd was light, maybe a dozen people, mostly employees and their plus ones. Soft music, clinking glasses, a cheese board big enough to feed a wedding. Trish floated away almost immediately, drawn into a conversation by 2 coworkers. Travis and I ended up near the drinks table. "So," I finally said, "Trish talks about work a lot. You guys must spend a ton of time together." Travis chuckled, a little too quickly. "Yeah, she's one of our best. Seriously, she makes my life easier. I gave a small smile. Must be nice. From the corner of my eye, I saw Elliot. He was standing near the dock, chatting with another guy I didn't recognize. He caught my glance, gave the smallest nod, then turned back like he didn't know me. The trap was already set, and nobody knew they were inside it. Later that night, after dinner and a few awkward games of charades, Trish found me on the deck. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Perfect," I said. "You seem like you're in your element." She smiled, brushing her hair behind her ear. "It's just nice seeing everyone outside of work. Travis does these retreats every year." "First I've heard of them," I said lightly. She paused. "We don't usually invite spouses. Why the change?" She hesitated. I thought, maybe it'd be good for us. I nodded slowly. "Good thinking." She leaned into me, resting her head briefly against my shoulder. It was the closest we'd felt in weeks, and it was all fake. Because what she didn't know was that Elliot had already spoken to the head of HR earlier that day. A formal audit was underway. The expense reports, the company card, the client spa bookings, all of it was being reviewed. And tomorrow morning, while everyone else pretending they hadn't spent the weekend lying to each other, Elliot and I were going to sit down for our first official strategy session. As I stood on that deck, watching Travis hold court in the living room like he owned every soul in it, I realized something. This wasn't going to be a dramatic collapse. No fire, no screaming. It was going to be slow, precise. And by the time they saw it coming, the ground would already be gone beneath their feet. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of loons on the lake and someone's regrettable attempt at brewing coffee. Trish was still asleep beside me, curled up like she hadn't spent the last month crafting a double life. I slipped out quietly, threw on a hoodie, and made my way down to the dock. Elliot was already there. Of course he was. Leaning on the railing, thermos in hand, watching the fog roll off the water like a man who'd seen this movie before. "Sleep well?" he asked, not turning around. Like a man sleeping beside a ticking clock. He smirked. "You'll get used to it. Until you don't have to." We sat on the dock in silence for a few minutes, sipping coffee and watching the sun melt the mist. Then he got to business. "I spoke with HR," he said. Quietly. "They're going through 6 months of expense reports. Every booking, every comp dinner, every time Travis claimed a client dinner that never had a client." I nodded. "How long before they find something actionable?" "They already have," he said. "Now they're building a case airtight enough to make it stick." I stared out at the water. "And Trish? She's tied to 2 of the reports, but we need more. Communications, private messages. HR's hands are a little tied there, but if you get something, that's different." "I've got screenshots," I said. 1 from him, 2 from her. They aren't graphic, but they're not professional either. Elliot raised his eyebrows. "We'll use them." Quietly, at first. We sat for another minute, then he asked the question I'd been avoiding. "You want to divorce her?" I didn't answer right away. I want her to know she lost something good, and I want her to know why she lost it. He nodded slowly. "So we start the long game." Back inside, brunch was in full swing. Travis was holding a spatula like it was a microphone, telling a story to 3 people who laughed too loudly at everything he said. Trish saw me and waved me over like we hadn't spoken the night before. "Made you a plate," she said cheerfully. "Thanks," I said, taking it, though I barely tasted a bite. Travis gave me a thumbs up across the room. "Glad you came out, man. This crew needed your energy." I gave him a tight smile. "Yeah, always happy to support the team." The rest of the day was uneventful on the surface, but beneath it, everything was shifting. I watched. I listened. I took mental notes of every quiet glance, every hallway whisper, every accidental touch between Trish and her boss when they thought no one was looking. By the time we packed up that afternoon, I had what I needed. Trish was glowing, humming again, acting like the whole retreat had been some romantic reset for us. On the drive home, she turned to me at a red light. "This weekend was really nice," she said. I kept my eyes on the road. "Yeah," I replied. "It was." And it was. Just not for the reasons she thought. Trish went back to work like nothing had changed. Late meetings resumed. Her phone stayed face down more often. The humming continued, soft, content, like someone who believed they had it all under control. I played my role with surgical precision, brought her coffee in the mornings, asked about her day, nodded at all the right moments, smiled like the guy who didn't know his marriage had expired 3 pay periods ago. But behind the curtain, the machine was humming. Elliot introduced me to his attorney, discreet, smart, dressed like he'd rather be underestimated. We met in a tucked-away office above a wine shop. The kind of place that doesn't advertise and doesn't need to. We sat down, and I handed him a flash drive. Screenshots, dates, names, hotel receipts, I said. Mostly surface-level stuff, but it builds a pattern. He plugged it in without a word, scanned a few files, and nodded slowly. It's enough to start a conversation, he said. Now we talk strategy. Over the next hour, we mapped out the cleanest escape possible. No fireworks, no shouting matches, no messy courtroom theatrics. Just a quiet, calculated dismantling of the life she thought she had locked down. We'd use the evidence carefully. Leverage, not vengeance. I don't want to destroy her, I said. I just want the truth to matter. Then let's make it matter on paper, he said, tapping the folder with my name on it. A few days later, I booked a reservation at an upscale bistro downtown. Trish always loved the place, said it made her feel elevated. I figured it was the perfect stage. Just as tonight, I told her that morning. No takeout. Dress up. She lit up like a teenager. Really? We haven't done that in forever. I know, I said. Felt like time. She wore that red dress again, the one from Charleston. The one I used to think she wore for me. At the table, she told me about her day. Laughed too loudly at her own stories. Played the part so well I almost believed it myself. Then came the moment. I pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. What's this? She asked, still smiling. Open it. She did. Inside was a list of transactions. Hotel bookings. Dinner tabs. A photo of her and Travis entering a hotel lobby. Timestamps matched her late meetings down to the minute. Her smile faded. She looked up at me like she didn't know who was sitting across from her. You've been following me? She whispered. No, I said. I've just been paying attention. She stared at the photo again. This isn't what it looks like. It is. You just hoped I'd never look close enough. She folded the paper slowly, placed it back into the envelope, and set it aside like it might bite. So what now? I looked her dead in the eye. No? We do this quietly. I'll file soon. You'll get your share. No scenes. No drama. You tell your story, I'll tell mine. But I've got documentation. She looked around the room like she expected someone to intervene. No one did. I stood up and placed some cash on the table. Enjoy your evening, I said. Then I left her sitting there in her red dress, at her favorite table, with nothing but the sound of her own silence. The funny thing about confrontation is how quiet everything gets afterward. Trish didn't blow up. She didn't scream or deny. She just froze. And in that stillness, the entire illusion cracked. She didn't come home that night. I didn't ask where she went. The next morning, she was in the kitchen like nothing had happened, sipping coffee, scrolling her phone, in one of my old t-shirts like we hadn't just agreed to dismantle our marriage. I can be out by the end of the week, she said flatly, not looking up. No rush, I replied, casual as toast. I'll stay with a friend for now. You can take your time. We both knew the friend was Elliot, who'd already arranged a guest house on his property for me to use during the process. By Friday, her closet was half empty, and her tone had changed. Shorter. Defensive. She asked if I'd told anyone. Not yet, I said. But you might want to. Because by then, Travis had already received a quiet visit from HR. It started with a meeting request. No subject. Just a time. Travis, being Travis, walked in with a smirk and a coffee the size of his ego. He walked out pale and silent. Elliot filled me in that evening in his office. They've suspended his corporate card. Legal's reviewing his expenses. I raised an eyebrow. That fast? When a man books 4 client dinners with no clients and bills a weekend spa suite as mentorship accommodations, things move quickly. The walls were closing in, and they knew it. On Monday, Trish didn't go to work. On Tuesday, she did, but left early. On Wednesday, Travis called a team meeting and didn't show up. By Thursday, whispers had turned into hallway glances, and employees started asking questions out loud. The golden duo wasn't so shiny anymore. That evening, Trish came home with a single question. Did you talk to Elliot? I didn't answer. She laughed bitterly. You did. That's how this started. No, I said calmly. You started this. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice. She stood there for a long time, trying to decide if there was a move left. But the board was empty. I never meant for it to go this far, she said quietly. That's the problem, I replied. You were always measuring how far you could go, never how much you'd lose. The next morning, she was gone. Left a note. No apology. No explanation. Just logistics. I'll have the rest of my stuff moved by Saturday. And that was fine, because I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I had plans. Elliot and I were meeting that weekend to finalize the details. Not just for the divorce, but for something bigger. Saturday came like the end of a season. The skies were gray, the kind of overcast that feels personal. I sat on Elliot's porch with a thermos of coffee and a folder thick enough to change someone's future. Trish was officially out. She'd moved the last of her things early that morning while I was gone. A silent exit for a woman who once couldn't leave a room without making sure she was seen. Elliot joined me, thumbing through a fresh stack of documents from HR. Well, he said, he did most of the work for us. 2 more flagged charges came in this week. We've got enough for a formal ethics violation and probable fraud. Is he fired yet? Elliot smirked. Not yet. We're inviting him to a performance review first thing Monday. Should be a lively chat. We went over everything one last time. The timeline, the evidence, the responses pre-written for legal, the public-facing version versus the internal one. It was a script Travis wouldn't know he was reading from until the lights went out. You're still okay with this being clean? Elliot asked. Clean is good, I said. No fireworks. Just closure. Elliot leaned back. You know, I fired a lot of people. Some for incompetence, some for arrogance. But this'll be the first time I've fired someone for being both, and also for thinking he could outmaneuver the guy who built the company. He raised his cup in a mock toast. To Travis, he said, may his next job not involve corporate credit. We clinked mugs. Later that day, I got a text, from an unknown number at first, but I recognized the writing. You got what you wanted. I hope it was worth it. Trish. I stared at it for a while, then typed out a reply. I didn't want this. I wanted honesty. You're the one who decided that was too expensive. I hit send. No reply came. None needed. Monday arrived like Judgment Day. Elliot called me after the meeting with Travis. I answered on the first ring. How'd it go? There was a pause. He was smug until he saw the paper trail, Elliot said. Then he just deflated. No shouting. No excuses. He knew. And Trish. She resigned 2 hours later. Probably pre-coordinated. HR accepted it quietly. That was it. No headlines. No lawsuits. Just 2 people walking out of a company they once felt invincible in, now erased from the payroll and the group chat. That night, Elliot and I sat on his back porch again. Quiet music playing from an old speaker. Now what? I asked. He shrugged. Now? We move on. You build something new. And me? I might finally retire for real. We watched the sun go down, the final light slipping below the treetops. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Why'd you really help me? He thought for a moment. Because I've been you. Not the exact story, but the same betrayal. And because I don't like seeing good people lose to smug amateurs. I nodded. Also, he added, you're more interesting than most of my board members. I laughed for the first time in a while. And for the first time in months, it didn't feel forced. It's strange how quiet a house feels after betrayal has moved out. Not the heavy silence of heartbreak. That passed. What I felt now was cleaner. Like when you mop a floor you didn't know was sticky. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for anything. I spent a few days alone, putting things back in order. I boxed up memories, rearranged the furniture, replaced the sheets. Trish didn't fight the divorce. She signed everything Elliot's lawyer drafted. No pushback, no dramatic monologues. We had no kids, no entangled business. Just joint accounts and a 7-year photo trail that no longer made me ache. She moved into a studio across town. I know because she updated her address on a mutual streaming account and forgot to remove my profile. Last I saw, she was watching a rom-com called Second Chances. Figures. As for Travis, he's gone from Onyx. No big goodbye post. Just deleted. The kind of exit that doesn't get balloons in the break room. Elliot still checks in. We've met up a few times. Golf, even a cookout at his place. He said he'd never had a best friend appear out of corporate scandal, but he's not mad about it. Funny how pain can introduce you to the right people. As for me, I'm good. Not perfect, but good. People think the hardest part of betrayal is the moment you find out. It's not. It's the moment you realize you weren't crazy. That all the things you felt, the pit in your gut, the tension in your chest, the silence that got too loud, were real. That's when the weight really lifts. You start breathing again, and this time, it's not recycled air. So here's what I'll say, for anyone reading this who thinks something is off in their relationship. Trust your gut. It's not always right, but it rarely lies. Don't rush to burn it all down. Watch. Listen. Collect truth like receipts. And when the time comes, don't scream. Don't beg. Don't plot chaos. Just stand up, straighten your shirt, and walk away like a man who knows exactly what he's worth.